Hi, it is September 21st, 2019. It's a Saturday. There's pretty much nobody here at the university. I'm here with my colleague Owen Brierley so that we can make this for you to help explain how you can make a scholarly audiobook for yourself. In 2015, I published a book called Critical Condition with Wilfrid Laurier University Press. Simultaneous with that writing process, I wanted to create the first ever scholarly audiobook. And we began working with the University Presses of Canada, so Wilfrid Laurier University Press, but there are other tremendous university presses. And there's an academic conference every year called the Congress of Social Sciences and Humanities. And when you go there, the university presses are all there. And I was very fortunate to be able to meet with representatives from the other presses and talk to them about this idea. But Wilfrid Laurier University Press, so Lisa Quinn and Siobhan McMenemy in particular, really helped me think about how this could be done and then allowed us to create the scholarly audiobook version of that book and give it away for free. Because what we want to do with this is show you how it's done. The first recording, we kept some of the errors in. We didn't refine certain parts out, so that what we can do is use it to show you the types of problems that could come up. So we've released those files. They're available for free. We're now doing the next version to do an improved version of the recording so we can give you a cleaner version, but we want to keep that original one to show you how, so what an error looks like when you're working in this realm. Now, at the same time that we began doing that, we knew that there was going to be a next phase of that, and the next phase of that really is where my colleague Owen is taking the lead. And so I'll speak about that in a second. Why a scholarly audiobook? So I love reading, I love books, and I read all the time. For my work, I have to do a lot of reading. It can be difficult to keep up on everything. And so when audiobooks began coming out, I was quite excited. It was really nice to hear certain books being read by sometimes the author and sometimes by a professional reader. Here's what I noticed. Maybe there was a book coming out and I was familiar with the book, I'd already read it, but I wanted to hear the audio version, a particular favorite. I have, my favorites like everyone. And what I would notice is, the person would come on and right away, if the reading wasn't done very well, I would be really disappointed. Whereas other books, the reading would be done so well that it just was an entirely different experience. And when you love great literature like I do, to have a different experience of it is a wonderful addition to your enjoyment of that work. So in that, what I began to realize was the books that were good were using performance techniques. Now, I'm a trained performer. I work in performance in the creation of media and in acting and these types of things. So we have formal protocols that allow us to do this work in a more effective way. And what I recognized was that the quality audiobooks were being done by places that were following those protocols. And what happens is generally the only way that can happen is if you've got a publisher with a lot of money, because you've got to have a recording studio and you've got to have a professional director and producer, engineer, maybe an actor that reads the book, etc. So that's wonderful, but we don't all have access to that money. And so for me as an academic, I began to think, well, if an audiobook can help us get more out of a book and potentially even understand parts of a book that we couldn't understand before, shouldn't we try and come up with a protocol, a way for academics, for scholars to do a scholarly audiobook? Now, if we are able to do that, it should mean that it makes scholarship more accessible, and that is incredibly important to us. If someone perhaps has a harder time reading, maybe due to some type of difference in their vision, if we can give them a quality audiobook experience, that allows them to have a more equal access to the text with someone who is able to just read the printed version. So that seemed to be of benefit. But the other part is that the core job of us as academics is we're supposed to explore ideas and then share the information with the public. It's our core responsibility. So when you work in the university, and when you work with a university press like Wilfrid Laurier University Press, we speak about knowledge dissemination, research dissemination, knowledge transfer, these types of things. The idea being that we are here to serve society, And so we have to not only discover the ideas, we have to pay attention to how do we get the results of our work out to the people who are paying for it. We are paid by the public purse. So the idea then of being able to come up with an effective way to do a scholarly audiobook would mean that we'd be better able to share our work, and that it might actually increase the ability of people to understand that work. And so if we can do that, boy, that would be something incredibly positive. And so Wilfrid Laurier University Press were terrific with that. We got great feedback from the other university presses in the country. We had one of our colleagues at WU Press, Claire Hitchens, went and she spent time with the CNIB, the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, and spoke to them about audio programs and that, because this is a large frame. So we began working on that for a number of years. We created a version. So we created a scholarly audiobook, and we have put it online. The press has it on their webpage next to the book. I've got it linked to my website. And so it's available for free. So the university press, it was very good of them. They were willing to let us put that out for free. Scholarly presses do not have a lot of money. And they were willing to do this to work with us in order to try and make a contribution in this area. Those first recordings were done with a director, with a sound engineer, with myself reading the text, because I'd written the book, but I also have training as a performer, so it allowed me to do that and make a contribution. And what we did is we did the recording in a serious way, but the way it's recorded contains errors, not in the text, but in the performance of the text. And we wanted to publish that and keep it out there so we can point out the types of errors that happen in the production of an audiobook, because we think it's important that if people want to learn how to do this for themselves, and that's the goal of this, is to make it really something that academics can take on pretty much for themselves, we want to show you some of the pitfalls, and so we need to be able to demonstrate that. So we are now recording the more sort of cleaned up version, an improved version, a revised version of those audio files. At the same time, there's a next step to this that was always envisioned as part of the project. Before we finished the first audiobook, with my colleague Owen Brierley, who is here working with me today, we had identified a desire to address, if we're supporting audio, is there a way to increase visual supports that are done in a way that is different than just text? So if you're recording audio, what visual components could be made present? Because if we're saying that a performed text can make it more understandable, then a performed text where you can, if you're someone who is able to read lips, or that you pick up on social cues or information in facial expression, you might wish to have those present to help you have greater access to the information in a text. And so there are many ways to think about how this works as access, but I'll explain it this way. As we began working, Owen and I, that is, thinking about how to do the visual component, the support structure for a visual, and basically taking the audiobook to an audio-visual book, or what we call an omnimedia book. We had conversations about how that's done well. And so one of the pieces was just something that we're friends, and so we've watched movies together at times, or we've watched videos about research that is of interest at times. And what you'll find is that if you're someone who is wanting to turn on closed captioning for a piece, maybe if you haven't experienced closed captioning, you might have seen a movie that has subtitles. When you begin to pay closer attention, you realize that sometimes these closed captioning choices, they can be auto-generated by computer systems, and it's nice that those are available in absence of other things, but they're wildly inaccurate at times, laughably so, and it's fun to talk about how off it can be while it's trying to interpret text. But of course, if you need that text, it's frustrating if you're not able to get accurate representation. And so once again, as I had noticed with the early audiobooks that some were of a demonstrably superior quality, once I began to turn my attention, with the support of my friend Owen, to the visual supports that he sometimes needs, I began to see that there was quality there, and that there can be ways of approaching closed captioning, of putting text into a media expression that are clearly more expressive than others. So they are not only precise in the words, so that what is on the screen matches what the speaker is saying, but they are placed on the screen in a way that brings attention to whether the font is readable, whether the font, if it's say a white font, ends up at times being set against a white background, so you lose the ability to read it. And going the next step, that at times that the placement of the font can really be done in a way that is attentive to visual expression, meaning it's not just words scrolling across a page, but one could begin to think about the placement of words in different ways that might draw upon something we might think of when we think of, say, a graphic novel or a comic book, that the placement of a word can really add to its expressiveness. So we are now adding those components to try and continue this experiment in order to get your feedback about how we can make this better, and in order to share with you the template that you can use if you would like to do this for your work. So there is great work out there in these sectors. The audiobook realm is breathtakingly beautiful, and people are doing excellent work. Similarly, the video essay, for example, is doing tremendous work with the placement of text and these types of pieces. I have my favorites in all of these realms, and I am inspired by their work. What we are trying to do is bring an affordable and easy solution for scholars, so that what we can do is ensure that the ideas that we are working on for society are able to be as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. Now, finally, there's this other part of accessibility that is something I thought of with the audiobook, but it also extended into the visual. So here's another way to think about accessibility. Imagine you're a student and you are studying a complex topic. Say you're taking biology. Imagine that inside of that you have no problem, say, reading books, that you normally read books. Now imagine that there are 12 chapters in the book that you have to study. And you read through the book and you're having a particularly difficult time with chapter 5. Well, we've all had difficulties with certain types of sets of knowledge. And so you go back and you reread and you reread and you try and make more notes. Maybe you make an appointment with the prof and ask questions. You're trying to learn. Well, what we know is that performed text, when it's done properly, aids understanding. So now what you can do is, instead of just rereading the chapter 5 that you couldn't understand, you can turn on the audio, turn on the visual, turn on the audio-visual, the omnimedia presentation of chapter 5, and it will help you understand, because the person presenting it is presenting it in a way that contains these performance supports that are designed to aid understanding. So it could help you better understand the work, even if you thought you didn't need the support of those omnimedia materials. And then there's one other component, which is that if we are a world that is filled with information, and if we are people that need to have lifelong learning, I think that it's important that we find ways where we don't have to, and let me tell you, I'm someone who loves to learn, but given what we know about the dangers of sitting for long periods of time and not being able to move, and given the amount of information that I feel responsible to read to keep up on what is going on, I think it's nice to have an option that you could, say that same chapter 5, you have to have it read for class. And now if you can do it while listening to it on audio, while you're on a treadmill at the gym, or maybe taking a walk in the park, or it gives you other options for making sure that you can get through the materials that you need to get through to be current. And so right from the beginning with the audiobooks, because I have so much to go through, things that were more general knowledge, things that I was not going to need to take handwritten notes on for lectures or something like that, but that I wanted to be current on, I was able to capture and listen to while I would go on walks. So it was allowing me to continue doing the work that I need to do, but providing me with options for ways to do it that I believe are healthier. And in the end, what we also know now from the science of learning is that adding some of that movement actually improves memory retention. So it seems to me that we benefit greatly from the new technologies that are available to us, and we want to see if we can provide the instructions, and they're pretty simple, for how you can do this for yourself. And we also want to put this out there, put our little attempt at these types of pieces, so that you can tell us what is working and what is not. So you can tell us some things that you think that we could add, because we want to improve these pieces, and we want to improve basically the toolkit for us, so that the ideal would be that you'll be able to come to this toolkit, and if you're the only person working this way on your campus, or if you are working alone on your project, that you will be able to create all of this by yourself. Is it going to be as good as a book that is created by a major publishing house? Well, no, because they've got a whole team and they've got a lot of money. But I happen to believe that scholarly work is of essential importance. And so if what we can do is help you, a person that is working on ideas and working on communicating those ideas to others, if we can help put these tools in your hands, I believe that that will be of great benefit to us all, and I believe that it will allow you to reach more people, which I'm sure you would like to do with the work that you have.